The purpose of these videos is to orient you to what components look like and how you act on them. If you haven't watched the Watch Me First video, please do that first, as it lets you know what to expect. As you read in Chapter 5, coded quotations are the primary building block for analysis in ATLAS.ti because a list of coded quotations is the end result of so many interrogations of the data. After demonstrating what this component looks like, we'll move on to the actions taken on coded quotations, leaving the common actions until later as usual and focusing on the specific actions, which are the simple retrieving of sets of coded quotations, more complex retrieval using the query tool and the co-occurrence table, counting coded quotations in different ways, linking coded quotations to other components, and finally, using a coded quotation to interrogate an entire document. You've already seen component orientation videos on both codes and quotations. Here is a quotation, and here is a code. You could say that because a quotation is a component in the program and a code is a component in the program, when a code is linked to a quotation to form a coded quotation, it's not necessary to think of this as a new and separate component. Whether or not it is technically true that a coded quotation is an independent component, we think of it that way because so much interrogating activity revolves around coded quotations. In the earlier video on quotations, I demonstrated how to create free quotations. And I can go to Document and then select some text and go to Create Free Quotation and make a free quotation, not yet linked to anything. And again, I can do that for this text as well. I may have given a misleading impression in that video that it is common to create free quotations in this way. There are certainly some specialized techniques that call for creating free quotations like this, but it's not the common way to proceed, and the usual process is to allow ATLAS.ti to create a quotation in the process of creating a coded quotation by linking a code to newly selected data. I'll open the code browser by going to the Home menu and here, and the code browser. And I prefer to have it on the right. Now I can select some text, and instead of creating a free quotation first, I can scroll down my list of codes to find the code that I want and drag it into the text, and it creates a quotation and links the code to the quotation to form a coded quotation all at once. Chapter 5 explained that coded quotations like this are the primary building block for interrogating activities because so many interrogations result in the final outcome of a set of coded quotations that, taken together, have some meaning that is apparent or is to be determined. This is a project investigating an authentic learning activity in a graduate class. Here is a code. The trainer chose the project. At the strategy level, I might be clear about the meaning of this code, and I'm ready to retrieve its coded quotations as evidence to flesh out my description of this concept. Or I might be unclear of the implications that this is how the authentic learning activity proceeded, and I want to look at the list of coded quotations for this code to reread and assess those implications. Either way, my interrogation at the tactics level requires retrieving the coded quotations for this code. I can right-click on the code and ask to see a list of the quotations, and then I can click through and read them in context or print them all out as a report. This is an example of a simple retrieval of coded quotations linked to a single code, and we do this all the time for a wide variety of purposes. A second way to interrogate coded quotations is through a more complex retrieval based on whether quotations are coded to more than one code. This is done through combining codes into queries or interrogations of more than one code using the query tool. And if you wish, these queries or interrogations of more than one code can be saved as a smart code. Here is the code manager, and here is a smart code, a saved query of more than one code. And you can tell it's a smart code by the barely visible little circle thing in the corner of its icon here. If I select it and go to Edit Smart Code, the Query tool opens and you can see what a query looks like. A query is constructed out of codes connected by operators. As you can see, there are 14 operators here. And in the next orientation video on smart codes, I'm going to demonstrate how these visual queries are constructed in the query tool. But in this video, I'm just going to introduce the 4 most commonly used operators, which are or, and, not, and co-occur. And let's first look at the or operator. If I construct a query that says, get me all quotations coded to either process versus content or coded to conflicted loyalties, then I would get both of these coded quotations as part of the results. The icon for this operator OR in the query tool has an icon that shows the union of 2 circles in a Venn diagram. So you can see you get everything, all the quotations coded to one code, as well as all the quotations coded to the other code. But if I use the AND operator, which you can see here is the intersection of the 2 circles in the Venn diagram, this is the most restrictive of the operators, even though AND sounds like it's very expansive. If I were to say, get me all the quotations coded to process versus content and coded to conflicted loyalties, I would get neither of these 2 quotations because neither is coded to this code and this code. The AND operator doesn't mean get me this quotation and this quotation. It means get me the coded quotations coded to this code and that are also coded to this code. So if I had asked for all quotations coded to process versus content and coded to treat it as a professional, then I would have got this quotation. The third operator I wanted to tell you about here is not, and that's very obvious. Say I made a query, get me all quotations coded to process versus content, but that are not coded to treated as a professional. Obviously, I would not get this coded quotation as part of my retrieved list. In these examples, I've shown you a pair of codes connected with an operator. In practice, you can build up more involved queries with many codes connected in a series with different operators, depending on how fine-grained and sophisticated is your coding scheme and the needs of your analytic tasks. The final operator I want to show you is called co-occur, and as you can see, the icon has 2 overlapping rectangles which represents overlapping quotations. This operator retrieves pairs of coded quotations on the basis of each quotation being coded to a different code, but having the quotations overlapping to some degree. In other words, do the 2 codes co-occur in the same area of the coded text, and the overlap can be of any degree. Here are a pair of coded quotations that overlap. The first one is coded to 4 codes, and the second one is also coded to 4 codes. And those sets of codes co-occur because they are found in the same area of the text, meaning that they are coded to quotations that overlap. So the code conflicted loyalties and the code proactive are co-occurring codes, and the resulting retrieved coded quotations for that query will include this pair of quotations. In this case, the overlap between these 2 quotations is several sentences. The overlap can be the minimum possible, which could be 1 space, or it could be a complete overlap, as in the case of the quotation above. So if we asked for all coded quotations for which process versus content co-occurs with treated as a professional, this coded quotation would be found, because the 2 quotations overlap. In fact, there aren't 2 quotations, the overlap is complete, so it's a single quotation. But all that matters for co-occur is that there is some overlap between the pair of quotations coded to the 2 different codes. These co-occurrence interrogations are so common that there's a special co-occurrence table where you can select 2 sets of codes and see how many coded quotations co-occur. You do that from the Analyze menu, and we can open the co-occurrence table, and we can select several codes to be the columns, and several other codes to be the rows, and we can see how many co-occurring quotations there are. For example, there are 10 quotations here, for which 1 quotation was coded to the client, and the other quotation was coded to ampersand negative. We might want to interrogate why there are 10 discussions with a negative connotation regarding the client. Click on 10, we'll see here the pairs of quotations. We can also export this table into Excel in order to further manipulate just the numbers. But then, of course, you won't have access to the underlying quotations. Well, this completes Part 1 on simple and complex retrieval of coded quotations. Please watch Part 2 for the remainder of the actions specific to coded quotations.